This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Oh, what's that smell? It smells like a complete and utter lack of knowledge and skill when it comes to building and maintaining websites. Yep, that's definitely coming from me. And that is exactly why I use Squarespace. Building my website, Arlo recommends, was a snap. I picked a template, I messed around with it, I put in my info, I put in some pictures and stuff, absolutely zero coding knowledge, and yet, what is this? Just a wonderful, perfect website now? How does that work? And now making changes or creating content for it is just so easy. I paste in my text, I can embed whatever I want. It can be video, it can be pictures, it can be tweets. I can do a bunch of stuff ahead of time and then schedule them all to go out later, and they'll even automatically push to social media for me. And if you need your website to do more, Squarespace offers loads of powerful extensions. And it's also got a really nice suite of analytics, so you can always see who's coming to your site, how many people, all that great stuff. To try out Squarespace for yourself, head to squarespace.com for a free trial. Then when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/Arlo to save 10% off your first website or domain. And now for today's recommendation, real Parmesan. I don't mean the shaky cheese you put on your pizza. I mean real good quality stuff. It's incredible, and you can still get it shredded for convenience. You know, put it on chicken, veggies, pasta, whatever. If you've never really had real Parmesan, try it out and get ready to have your mind blown. Thanks again to Squarespace. Now, smells like a video. Hat culture. Hello, my friends! I'm here today with a top 10 video. I decided that I don't do nearly enough of them, and they're really fun, so I'm gonna do more. Today's top 10 is about Wii games. Something to keep in mind. There are a lot of Wii games. There's like 1,600 or something? Yeah, 1,600, all right. Also, during the latter half of the Wii's life, I was focused a bit more on other systems, so there are a lot of hugely popular games that you love that I never got around to playing. I did have my Wii heyday though, and during that time, I played the thing a lot. If I were to replay everything now and also play a bunch of new games, this list would probably look pretty different. My tastes have changed, and the novelty of motion controls has all but died out for me. So instead, I want to look at the Wii's library in the context of that heyday, from the perspective of that mid to late 2000s young adult Arlo, enamored as he was by that weird little system. I miss that Arlo. So here we go. These are my top 10 Nintendo Wii games. Feels good. Doing top 10s feels good. First up is Bit.Trip Beat. Bit.Trip Runner is the game that ended up spawning some sequels and still lives on today, but there were actually a bunch of Bit.Trip games on the Wii, most of which I never hear anyone talking about. I played a few of them, but the one that grabbed me the hardest was Beat. It's really simple. All you do is use motion controls to move this Pong-looking paddle, and you gotta basically deflect all the Pong-looking blocks that come at you. Each thing that hits makes music, so it all drives the soundtrack, which was actually very novel back then. Like I said, simple concept, but really simple only in concept. There are a million different ways these little blips come at you. Everything acts uniquely, so you gotta really learn each level in order to master them. There are even boss battles. They really took the idea and ran with it. The game also looks really cool. Clean visuals, lots of color, weird stuff floating in the background. This game is not even almost the sort of thing I would play today. It can actually be really hard, and I was never too good at it, and I certainly don't have the patience for it anymore. But at the time, I was all about Bit.Trip Beat. This was before everyone had smartphones, so like the very idea of smaller downloadable games was just incredible, and I was wowed by the quality of this one. I also remember it particularly because for some reason it really annoyed some of my friends when I played it. I suppose because they had to hear the same songs over and over again or something. And we even had a big argument about it when one of them claimed that what we were hearing didn't even count as music. That was quite the argument. Good times. Next up, we've got Trauma Center, Second Opinion. I don't think this was the sort of game I would have normally been into, and I didn't even really know much about it, but when I worked at Game Crazy, I got to rent games for free from the neighboring Hollywood Video, so I just randomly grabbed this one night when I finished my shift, and I brought it over to my friend's house. A whole bunch of my friends were hanging out, and I had actually only just kind of squeezed my way into their friend group, so I was still feeling a little awkward. Focusing on a video game is a really great way to pass the time without having to make eye contact with anyone, so I hooked up my Wii, popped in Trauma Center, started playing. Everyone, myself included, thought the idea of a surgery game was quite silly and that this game was clearly just absolutely ridiculous. However, by the first quote-unquote boss battle, everyone was glued to the TV, rooting for me and giving advice and shouting like they were at a rowdy Super Bowl party. And that is a memory that I will always really treasure. Oh, and don't get me wrong, Trauma Center Second Opinion is also just a really great game. I played it a lot even after that night, and I really enjoyed it. It's the drama of a hospital with an over-the-top anime twist, which is just hilarious. The controls are intuitive, and the concept itself was just so novel at the time. It was something entirely new, and it really worked. Heck, it still works. The way the game teaches you all these little techniques and then starts demanding that you apply these techniques in increasingly tense situations, it's incredibly rewarding when you get it all down. Between the excellent gameplay and the happy memory I've associated with it, Trauma Center Second Opinion is definitely one of my favorite Wii games. Blob is a weird game. You play as this paint blob superhero guy, and you gotta help a team of rebels take back their city from this army of ink people who turned everything black and white and enslaved everyone. You do this mainly by painting. You collect ink and you roll around and you paint stuff by touching it. Buildings, trees, cars, even people. Touching an object paints the whole thing instantly, and a musical riff kicks in each time with different styles and instruments depending on what color you are. This is immensely satisfying. Transforming such a drab, lifeless place into a colorful party town never stops feeling good. Each level has got loads of different little challenges you've got to complete to reach the end, and lots of enemies to fight and obstacles to overcome and all that stuff. But honestly, I just like messing around in free paint mode. I do that other stuff when I have to progress, and you've got to beat a level in order to unlock it in free paint. But really, like all the combat and challenges and stuff, it's just really not the fun of the game. The whole fun is just painting. The game has got such a terrific vibe. It's this like coastal city kind of thing I still really love today. And especially after you paint everything, it's just this colorful utopia where everyone is partying all the time. And it's also this big message against uniformity and control, and it's kind of therapeutic. When I think about it. Plus, the animation is really good, it's got lots of fun cutscenes, it's clearly a labor of love. Blob is actually on modern platforms and holds up pretty darn well since it was just so polished and inspired in the first place. The free paint mode is actually great for very young gamers. Just, don't actually buy it on the Wii. I liked it on the Wii, but it really wasn't fun having to flick the Wii remote up to jump every single time. Yeah, glad they fixed that. Oh, okay, and now that I think about it, this game also annoyed one of my friends. I think it was something about the music, maybe? I don't know. I think that's what I got for always playing games in the living room on the main TV, I guess. Half my memories are of annoying my friends. Back in the early days of the Xbox 360 and the burgeoning world of download games, nothing could beat Geometry Wars. When you're talking about small games, it was the small game. It was the asteroid-style arcade spaceship score chaser shoot-'em-up of yesteryear, but with incredible visuals and twin-stick controls that took the genre to a whole new level. Like seriously, just having one stick to move and one stick to shoot, that was mind-blowing. Nowadays, the Geometry Wars brand isn't quite as well known, so you'd be forgiven for not remembering one particular offshoot that I absolutely never hear anyone talk about. Geometry Wars Galaxies was exclusive to the Wii and DS. I played it on Wii, and it was the only game I ever used my classic controller with. And boy, this was one of those perfect games for me. Geometry Wars was fun for a while, but like overall, I don't like chasing a high score. Oh, but Galaxies took the concept and spun it into a whole campaign with loads of levels, which was naturally right up my alley. I played the heck out of it. I couldn't put it down. And it's funny because I haven't played it since then, and I don't even really remember it that well. I just know that at the time, it was like too much fun. It was especially fun because at the time, I was now living with some of those friends that I mentioned earlier, and all of our other friends would just like hang out all the time. And one Christmas, we kept getting like new games and stuff for like weeks after Christmas. So we kept saying that it was like Christmas just kept going, and we were like keeping it alive. And this was one of the games involved in that, and so it was fun. Oh, and also one of my friends had the DS version of Galaxies, so I would play mine while he played his. Man, really a lot of my best Wii memories involve my friends. It's interesting. I guess it was just a really formative and fun time in my life. Going to college, having a bunch of friends. Yeah. I also played a lot of MTG. A whole lot. That was great. But anyway, the point is, Geometry Wars Galaxies is amazing, and why have we not gotten a remaster yet? If you know me and you've seen some of my other list videos, you know that I love cheating. Cheating when it comes to getting games on my lists. And right now I'm cheating and combining Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2. I liked 1 more at the time because it was closer to the classic formula with the hub world, but I think I like 2 more now because its design is tighter, and I'm not really sure which to give more importance to, so whatever, let's just do both at once. What do you care? This just means more games on the list. Super Mario Galaxy 1 and 2 are both superb games. As I've said before, I'm more of a sandbox Mario guy, so I'm not quite as in love with them as most people. I've come to appreciate them a lot more in recent years. Back in the day, though, I did feel a bit disappointed. It felt like they were missing something. I actually ended up borrowing them from a friend because I just didn't really feel drawn to buy both games. Despite all that, though, despite how much I complained about them and said they were missing something, I sure did play the heck out of them. I don't know if I was maybe between jobs at the time or what, but I remember just sitting down and playing the absolute heck out of both. I ended up 100%ing both of them. Okay, I actually never beat the Daredevil version of the very last level in Galaxy 2, and that still haunts me to this day. It's just funny because even if I wasn't as appreciative of the incredible level design, I was clearly enjoying the games an awful lot. And you know what? That raw playability, that enjoyability is one thing I would discover later. Sandbox Mario is fun, I like it the most, but it's so much easier to abandon. Linear Mario, you can just kind of keep playing all the way through without really having too much trouble at all. The Galaxy games just have such clever mechanics, so much variety, and such a cool space theme. You know these games, you don't need me to tell you why they're great. It's Super Mario Galaxy. Also worth noting, my friends were also around pretty much the entire time I played Super Mario Galaxy, but they never got annoyed like they did with other games. So that must be worth something right there. Our next game is another smaller download game, but to me, it made just as much of an impact as a big retail title. After its success, the world would be flooded with touch-controlled physics puzzlers, especially in the mobile space. But from my perspective, World of Goo was the OG. This was basically the best mobile game ever, when mobile games were barely even a thing. In World of Goo, you move these little goo balls around to build structures with the goal of getting enough of them to the end. The fewer you use to build, the more reach the goal, so efficiency is always encouraged. There are loads of different kinds of goo balls to work with. They do all sorts of different stuff. There's all kinds of hazards and obstacles and challenges and stuff to overcome. And I can't even describe just how innovative and fun this was at the time. The organic, physics-based nature of it, the satisfaction of building these structures so intuitively, the joy of figuring out just the right strategy. The game is so tactile. It just feels so incredible to put these things together. Then on top of all that, it's got a terrific sense of humor with lots of very funny writing and a clean, stylish art style. The game absolutely wowed me. It was unlike anything I had ever played. I was obsessed. I mean, it wasn't just a great game. It wasn't just fun. It's that it was an early indie masterpiece. It was the complete package. It could have gotten away with just focusing on its raw concept and very little else. But instead, it's the whole shebang. It's the gameplay and the vibe and the art, just the feel and the humor and the story and just everything. You can still get World of Goo today on modern platforms, and it's still really, really good. Though, gosh golly gumdrops, I never understood why Tomorrow Corporation didn't want to make a sequel. Instead, they keep making these games that I think are about coding or something that I'm just very sadly not interested in. I don't get it, but oh well. Super Smash Bros. Brawl was the very last Smash game I was ever really into. Still not quite on the same level as 64 and Melee, simply because I, wasn't a kid with unlimited free time anymore, but I did play it an awful lot, and I loved every minute of it. A lot of people dislike it for a lot of different reasons, but from a very casual perspective, it was everything the third Smash game could be. The new fighters were awesome. I loved Pit and Meta Knight. Having non-Nintendo characters was mind-blowing, and I just loved how huge the roster had grown. The graphics had this kind of realistic edge to them. They looked great. I don't care what anyone says. The sticker system was so cool, and the game had so many little features. You could save clips for Pete's sake. Oh! And the level editor! There was a level editor! That was a game changer! And then, most important of all, of course, it's the Subspace Emissary campaign. All the Nintendo characters getting together for one giant crossover adventure with levels and bosses from all the different series and these epic animated cutscenes. It was unreal. It was unreal. It felt like a dream. Seriously, it was everything I could have ever wanted. As far as my own personal enjoyment of the series goes, it was the pinnacle of Smash. We will never get another game like it, I am sure. Future titles would go on to make very popular changes and overall just be better suited to the hardcore fans, but nothing will ever beat Brawl for me. I mean, it was the last Smash game where you could go in blind and actually be surprised by what characters you unlock, which was just such a huge thing for me. Such a massive part of the enjoyment. Very much a relic of simpler times. Similarly, Brawl was the last Smash game I played a pretty good amount with. Oh, look at that. There are those friends again. More friend memories, more! Oh, and it's also worth noting that Brawl is extra special because a decade later, it would help spawn the very first Arlo meme. Longtime viewers will know what I'm talking about. Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition obviously is not an original Wii game, and I don't even think you could call it a remaster. It was just Resident Evil 4 with all of the content from the PS2 version with motion controls tacked on. Sounds a little silly, and yet when I look back on my Wii experience, I can see that this was one of those games I obsessed over most. One of the games that truly defined my time with the system. I had played the original on GameCube, and I liked it, but this was on a whole new level. The waggle stuff was good. There was definitely something enjoyable about swinging the Wii remote like a knife, and for whatever reason, tying the QuickTime events to waggle made them ridiculously easy to pull off perfectly, which was certainly convenient. But really, it was the pointer controls. Back then, my aim was even more awful than it is now. So allowing me to just point and shoot changed everything. The game was already good, but now it was so ridiculously good. So much fun. And the funny thing is, the game was not balanced for this new input style at all, as far as I know. Like, being able to freely aim, especially in a game with this relatively slow, methodical combat, it completely broke the experience. It was so much easier. But I did not care. If anything, that just allowed me to run through it about 1 billion times, feeling like Rambo. I mean, the game itself, despite being pretty meaty, also encourages repeat playthroughs. You know, you got treasures to collect, little tricks to take out enemies efficiently, all these cheese tactics to learn. The first playthrough and the 10th playthrough are night and day. It's just a completely different game. Resident Evil 4 Wii Edition is the game that got me into Resident Evil. So obviously, it was a pretty special experience, and most assuredly, one of the funnest experiences I had on my Wii. Metroid Prime Trilogy is another cheat. I kinda wanted to talk about Prime 3 separately from the other 2 ported games, but oh well, who cares? Let's just cover them all here. As a package, there is no denying that Metroid Prime Trilogy was a preposterously good deal. The kind that we will never, ever see again from Nintendo. 3 incredible games, all the very definition of the AAA experience on their respective platforms in one package. Jeez. The ports of Prime 1 and 2 were simply incredible. I already loved those games to pieces. Prime 1 still being an all-time top 10er for me. But now on the Wii, they had pointer controls. Same with Resident Evil 4. It was just incredible to be able to point and shoot. It was so much more intuitive and fun. And now you could aim and move at the same time? What? Have you ever heard of such a thing? But then, of course, Prime 3 was the Wii original Metroid Prime. My opinion on the game has changed a bit over the years, but again, I'm looking at this mainly from the perspective of Wii playing Arlo. And Wii playing Arlo thought this was the coolest game ever. The Wii was basically an overclocked GameCube, yet somehow they made Prime 3 look so much better, it was hard to believe at times I wasn't looking at a next-gen game. It was built with the Wii in mind, so there were all these little motion-controlled features I loved. Ripping off enemy shields in particular felt amazing. It was so immersive. The game really cranks the spectacle up to 11, with all these different planets to visit, and even cutscenes with characters and dialogue and everything. Nintendo was really behind the competition in a lot of ways back then, but this game made it feel like they were catching up. They were capable of creating the kinds of experiences my friends were playing on their fancy Xboxes. And of course, there's the fact that this game was the epic conclusion to a trilogy of games. How often do you get a trilogy of Nintendo games with an ongoing self-contained story following the same character? I'll tell you the answer, it's not very often. The Wii didn't have a ton of AAA experiences that really wowed me, but it sure as heck had Metroid Prime 3, didn't it? And finally, number 1, the very first Wii game I ever purchased on launch day all those centuries ago, completely abusing my privilege as a game-crazy employee to nab one of the only 3 units our store got. I was actually kind of wary of the Wii version of Twilight Princess at first. Change is scary, and I didn't want anything to compromise my enjoyment of this, the latest and most ridiculously incredible looking Zelda game ever. But at the last minute, I went with the Wii version, and I was so glad that I did. Once more, I will remind you that in those days, motion controls were everything for me. They were the future. The immersion factor was just unreal. It was like I had never felt that much like I was in a game before. And having that experience in a Zelda game, it was unlike any gaming experience I have ever had, honestly. Even to this day. I mean, I still love Twilight Princess, but I cannot overstate how much I enjoyed it at the time. You know when you really get your head into a game and you enjoy it probably even more than you're intended to? Has that ever happened to you? That was me. I was absorbed. It was my world. I immersed myself emotionally, feeling everything that Link was feeling. It took me a long time to beat the game because it was so special that I had a hard time finding good alone time to play it. The mood and everything had to be perfect. One time when my roommates were out of town, I played it for 12 hours in one day, and that was the first time I had ever played anything that much. There were so many things that lined up perfectly to make Twilight Princess such an astounding game for me at that exact point in my life. I was still young enough that that kind of emotional connection and immersion factor were still easy to maintain. The game takes place after Ocarina of Time, and I also completely immersed myself in that world, so seeing how things had changed since that point on the timeline was incredible. It was like time traveling to a future version of the town I grew up in. I had such a strong connection to it, and the motion controls afforded by the Wii made that connection and immersion even deeper. The game felt massive. It's got such a big world and so many dungeons. It's got this gritty, grim, kind of realistic style that seemed so modern and beautiful, like the Zelda games I'd enjoyed for years, but all grown up. The visual designs of the characters and the enemies were all so intriguing to me. The game was also so creepy, ranging from eerie and disturbing to downright scary. I loved it. I really loved it. Honestly, I think I can say that it really was probably the single most enjoyable video game experience I've ever had and probably ever will have. Again, it was all these things lining up in exactly the right way at exactly the right time for me. The stars really aligned for this one in a once-in-a-lifetime kind of way. And even if it's a bit easier to see the game's flaws nowadays, that initial playthrough ensured that Twilight Princess is not only my very favorite Wii game, but a game that will remain buried deep in my heart forever. Before we wrap this up, I have two honorable mentions in a category that is completely unique to the Wii. These were games that I would absolutely never play today, but I loved at the time because motion controls were just that much of a thing. The first is Excite Trucks. It's a fairly basic racing game, but you steer with the Wii remote and you shake it to get a boost and you fly around all over the place. And when the Wii first launched, the concept was just that novel and fun, I guess. The second honorable mention is a Call of Duty game. I do not remember which one. There were a bunch on Wii. I want to say it was 3, I think. Whatever. Again, I was just crazy about the simple concept of motion aiming, and that made this one of the first shooters I actually really enjoyed. The game moved at a snail's pace compared to the other versions, but I still had a lot of fun with it. So there you have it. Those are my top 10 Wii games, plus a bunch of stuff about my friends that I really didn't anticipate going into this. Just kind of happened. What are some of your favorite Wii games? What are some other top 10s I should do? And more importantly, what games do you play to annoy your friends? Let me know down in the comments. That's a good top 10 idea right there. Top 10 games that annoyed my friends. Yeah, that's pretty good.